It was 7 a.m. in the South China Sea. The ocean was quiet, and from the deck of the USS Arlington, the morning seemed like any other. The Arlington, an amphibious transport dock ship, was sailing as part of Carrier Strike Group 7. Alongside it were 2 destroyers, support ships, and a small carrier operating about 20 nautical miles away. They were conducting routine presence operations in international waters, part of a standard U.S. Navy patrol near the heavily disputed South China Sea. Below deck, sailors were rotating out of the night shift. Some grabbed a quick breakfast in the mess hall, eggs, toast, coffee, while others headed toward maintenance bays to begin inspections on aircraft, including MV-22 Ospreys and CH-53 helicopters. Pilots prepped for scheduled flight training. Deck crews were checking fuel lines, sensors, and safety equipment. It was the kind of organized routine that ran like clockwork. But what no one on board realized was that they were already being hunted. Since around 3 a.m., a Chinese Yuan-class submarine had been shadowing the strike group. The sub, operating in near-silent mode, was equipped with advanced sonar, air-independent propulsion, and YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles. It had tracked the fleet from nearly 40 nautical miles away, slipping past the U.S. underwater detection grid during a shift change in sonar surveillance. It wasn't alone. Roughly 60 miles west of the Arlington, a formation of 3 Chinese surface vessels, a Type 055 destroyer, a Type 052D destroyer, and a smaller corvette, had moved into coordinated positions. All 3 ships were equipped with long-range radar, vertical launch systems, and naval cruise missiles. They stayed just outside the U.S. radar envelope, using sea clutter and low-altitude drone relays to track the strike group. The Chinese move was deliberate. This wasn't meant to start a full-scale war, but to send a message. A calculated strike. Damage the Americans. Humiliate them. Prove that the South China Sea was no longer a place they could operate without challenge. And most importantly, test their reaction time. At exactly 7:18 a.m., the attack began. The first missile, a YJ-18B, launched from underwater. The missile was designed for stealth, fast, sea-skimming, hard to detect. Traveling at nearly Mach 0.9, it covered the distance in under 2 minutes. The missile slammed into the starboard side of the USS Arlington, just behind the hangar deck. The explosion rocked the entire ship. Bulkheads shook. Lights flickered. The shockwave knocked several crew members off their feet. Fire alarms screamed to life. Smoke started pouring out of one of the ventilation shafts. Inside the ship, automated blast doors began sealing compartments to prevent further damage or flooding. 12 seconds later, a second missile hit, this time on the edge of the flight deck. It tore through part of the metal grating and exploded near a parked MH-60 Seahawk helicopter. The blast threw shrapnel across the deck, igniting small fires and blowing out communications panels. Onboard chaos erupted, but only for a moment. Then training took over. Fire teams moved fast. Wearing flame-retardant suits, they rushed toward the flight deck, dragging hoses, extinguishers, and stretchers. Below deck, damage control crews assessed structural integrity and checked for hull breaches. Smoke evacuation fans kicked in. Medical staff scrambled toward the forward aid station. The ship wasn't crippled, but it was wounded, and it needed protection fast. Within moments, the USS McCampbell and USS Preble, both Arleigh Burke-class destroyers equipped with Aegis combat systems, sprang into action. Their SPY-1D radar arrays lit up, scanning for further threats. They found them. Multiple radar pings indicated another wave of incoming missiles, likely launched from the nearby Chinese destroyers. The Chinese intended to disable the Arlington completely and then retreat before U.S. aircraft could respond. But this time, the U.S. defenses were ready. The destroyer's Aegis systems locked on. SM-2 surface-to-air missiles were launched in rapid succession from vertical launch cells. In under 40 seconds, the U.S. interceptors hit their marks, detonating 3 incoming Chinese missiles mid-air before they could reach their targets. One missile managed to get through but was thrown off course by last-minute countermeasures from Preble's electronic warfare suite. Now, the battle group had a choice: stay defensive or strike back. What the Chinese hadn't expected was how fast the U.S. Navy could shift from defense to offense. In less than 10 minutes after the first missile strike, the flight deck crew began prepping Super Hornets for launch. Repair teams sealed off the damaged deck section. Engines fired, the ship was still afloat and ready to hit back. And this was only the beginning. This wasn't the first time the Navy had considered a sudden attack. In fact, they had a pre-established operation plan for surprise engagements in the region. By 7:40 a.m., an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft was launched from the carrier in the group, and several FA-18 Super Hornets took to the air. Their orders were to locate and disable the Chinese vessels responsible for the attack. Within minutes, the air units confirmed at least 3 Chinese destroyers positioned 60 nautical miles west of the group, moving in formation. At the same time, the USS Missouri, a Virginia-class submarine that had been operating under silent mode a few hundred miles south of the fleet, received the go code for attack. The Missouri had already picked up sonar signatures from the Chinese submarine and had been tracking it. At 8:05 a.m., the Missouri launched 2 torpedoes. One hit the Chinese submarine. The detonation was confirmed by seismic sensors and underwater drones. The submarine was destroyed. No counterattack came from below. Meanwhile, back in the air, the FA-18s reached missile range and launched a barrage of anti-ship missiles at the nearest Chinese destroyer. 2 missiles found their target, causing fires and damaging its propulsion. The ship began to slow, drifting slightly off course. At 8:25 a.m., another group of FA-18s launched missiles at the second Chinese ship. It attempted to respond with its onboard defenses, but the EA-18G Growler accompanying the American jets jammed its radar and communications. 3 direct hits crippled the vessel, knocking out its command systems. The third ship began to retreat, but it was too late. USS Preble moved into position and launched a volley of Tomahawk cruise missiles. The missiles traveled fast and hit just above the waterline, tearing a hole near the engine compartment. The destroyer was left dead in the water. By 9 a.m., all 3 Chinese ships had either been destroyed or disabled. The immediate threat was over. U.S. aircraft circled the area, confirming no further movement from enemy ships or subs. Surveillance drones scanned the region for additional threats, but there were none. On the Arlington, damage control teams had contained the fires. 1 helicopter was destroyed, and parts of the deck were scorched, but the ship remained operational. There were several injuries, but no deaths. By 9:30 a.m., the ocean had gone quiet. The smoke had cleared. The missile trails were gone, and what was left behind was a mess China didn't want anyone to see. One of their most modern submarines, a Yuan-class diesel-electric attack sub, was gone, completely destroyed by a torpedo from the USS Missouri. It had been trailing the strike group for hours, feeding targeting data back to the surface fleet. But once the Americans locked on, it never had a chance. The torpedo struck near the stern, breaking the hull. It sank in minutes. No emergency beacon, no survivors. 58 crew members gone without a trace. On the surface, it was worse. Their lead destroyer, a Type 055, had tried to press the attack. It was China's Pride, a next-generation warship with over 100 vertical launch cells, but it had no defense against what came next. 2 U.S. anti-ship missiles tore through its upper decks. The command tower collapsed. Fires swept through the bridge. For a while, the ship drifted, burning. Then, slowly, it began to list. And within the hour, it rolled over and sank. By the time the smoke settled, China had lost 4 frontline naval vessels, dozens of drones, 1 aircraft, and over 600 personnel. The operation was a complete disaster, but no one outside the region heard about it. There was no press release from Beijing, no official report, not even a vague statement. The Chinese government went completely silent. Search and rescue missions were launched quietly, disguised as routine naval drills. Survivors were pulled from the sea at night and taken to coastal bases under blackout conditions. Satellite images of the wreckage were scrubbed. Civilian shipping lanes were redirected to avoid the area. They had launched the first strike hoping to force the U.S. Navy to retreat. Instead, they watched their fleet vanish beneath the waves. If you want to hear more intense war stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel.